My name is Rebecca, I'm 29 years old, and I thought today would be the happiest day of my life. The pregnancy test showed 2 clear lines, and I couldn't wait to surprise Jason, my boyfriend of 2 years. We talked about marriage, kids, our future together. I rushed home early, heart pounding with excitement. But as I approached our apartment door, I heard his voice. He was talking to someone, laughing. I froze when I heard my name. What followed shattered my entire world in just 60 seconds. I never knew words could physically hurt until that moment. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had your trust broken and want to see how I turned my heartbreak into the best decision of my life. Before I met Jason, I had built a pretty stable life for myself. After graduating with my business degree, I landed a great job at a marketing firm in the city. I had my own apartment, a circle of amazing friends, and financial security that I was proud of. Sure, I'd had my heart broken before. A college boyfriend who cheated, another relationship that fizzled out due to distance, but I'd learned from those experiences. Or at least I thought I had. I met Jason at my friend Emily's dinner party 2 years ago. He walked in with his infectious laugh and charismatic smile, immediately drawing everyone's attention. When our eyes met across the room, I felt that movie moment connection that I'd always been skeptical about. He made his way over to me, and we ended up talking for hours after everyone else had left. Emily later told me she'd never seen me click with someone so quickly. Jason pursued me with an intensity that was flattering. He sent flowers to my office, left sweet notes on my car, and planned elaborate dates that showed he was paying attention to the things I mentioned liking. On our 3rd date, he took me to a small jazz club because I'd mentioned once that my dad used to play saxophone. When he kissed me that night, it felt like everything falling into place. What I didn't recognize then were the subtle red flags. Jason always had big dreams and schemes, but seemed to jump from one to another without following through. He'd talk about the tech startup he was consulting for, then a month later, it would be a real estate venture with a friend. Nothing ever seemed to materialize into actual income. When we'd go out, his credit card would mysteriously decline, and I'd end up covering the bill. He'd be embarrassed, promising to pay me back, but somehow never did. 6 months into our relationship, Jason mentioned his ex-girlfriend Samantha. They'd been together for 3 years before breaking up just 6 months before we met. He said they'd grown apart, wanted different things. I didn't think much of it. Everyone has a past. Occasionally, her name would come up in conversation, or he'd get texts that made him step away to respond. When I questioned him, he'd say she was still working through the breakup, and he was trying to be kind. I appreciated his compassion. It seemed like another sign of his good character. After 8 months, Jason's apartment lease was ending, and he suggested moving in together. It seemed fast, but we were spending most nights together anyway. The timing worked, and I was in love. I had a 1-bedroom apartment that was comfortable for 1 but tight for 2. Jason suggested we find a bigger place, something we could really make our own. We found a beautiful 2-bedroom with a view of the park. The rent was significantly more than what I'd been paying, but Jason assured me his new consulting gig was about to pay off big time. It never did. Soon I was covering the rent, utilities, groceries, and most of our date nights. Jason always had an excuse. The client was late paying, the contract fell through, the deal was taking longer than expected. I believed him because I wanted to. I'd invested in the relationship, in our home, in our future. And he was so appreciative, always thanking me, promising things would turn around. He'd cook dinner sometimes or give me massages after long workdays. The emotional support felt like it balanced the financial imbalance. About 6 months ago, Jason started talking about marriage. Not a proposal, just casual mentions of when we get married or our future kids. He'd point out rings when we walked past jewelry stores. I was thrilled that we were on the same page about our future. I started saving even more aggressively, cutting back on my own expenses, thinking I was building toward our life together. The morning everything changed started so beautifully. I hadn't been feeling well for a couple of weeks, nauseous in the mornings, unusually tired. I'd bought a pregnancy test the day before, but waited until Jason left for what he called a networking breakfast to take it. When those two pink lines appeared, I felt a wave of emotions: shock, joy, nervousness, excitement. This wasn't planned, but it wasn't unwelcome either. We'd talked about wanting children someday. Someday had just arrived a little earlier than expected. I called my office and told them I wasn't feeling well and would work from home. I wanted to create a special moment to tell Jason. I picked up his favorite takeout for lunch, bought a tiny pair of baby shoes, and planned to surprise him when he came home that evening. But as the day went on, I couldn't contain my excitement. I decided to surprise him earlier. I texted to ask casually when he'd be home, and he said not until dinner. Perfect. I could surprise him with lunch instead. I gathered everything and headed to our apartment, my heart fluttering with anticipation of his reaction. Would he be shocked? Happy? Nervous? I imagined his face lighting up, him picking me up and spinning me around, both of us laughing and crying. I had no idea that in just a few minutes, those dreams would be completely shattered. I approached our apartment building with butterflies in my stomach, balancing the takeout bag in one hand and my purse with the tiny baby shoes in the other. The elevator ride up to the 6th floor felt longer than usual, my mind racing with how I would tell him. Should I just blurt it out? Show him the test? Give him the tiny shoes first? As I reached our door, I realized I could hear Jason's voice from inside. He was talking loudly, which was unusual since he was supposed to be at meetings all day. I paused, not wanting to interrupt if he was on an important call. That's when I heard laughter, his and a woman's. Something about the familiar, intimate tone made me hesitate before using my key. I know, I heard Jason say, his voice crystal clear through the door. She's so stupid. Rebecca actually believes I'm going to marry her. My hand froze on the doorknob. I couldn't have heard correctly. You should see how desperate she is, he continued, followed by another laugh. She pays for everything, the rent, the bills, even funded that trip I told her was for a business conference. That was actually when I came to see you in Chicago. The takeout bag nearly slipped from my fingers. My legs felt weak, but I couldn't move. She's pathetic, Samantha. You should see how she looks at me, thinking we have this great future ahead. I'm just using her for her money until you take me back. She believes everything I say. The woman, Samantha, his ex, said something I couldn't quite hear, and they both laughed again. I know exactly how to play her, Jason continued. A few compliments, some sob story about a client not paying on time, and she opens her wallet. Meanwhile, I've been saving everything I can from what she gives me for business expenses. I've got almost enough to put a down payment on that condo you liked. My entire body was trembling. The nausea I'd been feeling all week returned with a vengeance, but now for an entirely different reason. 2 years of my life, thousands of dollars, my heart, my trust, all given to someone who saw me as nothing but a bank account and a joke. The best part? Jason's voice turned even more mocking. She thinks I don't notice how she's been saving up. Probably thinks it's for a wedding. God, she's so desperate it's almost sad. Tears were streaming down my face, but I made no sound. I couldn't process what was happening. This couldn't be real. The man I loved, the father of the baby I was carrying, was laughing about me with his ex-girlfriend. I needed to get away before I completely broke down. With shaking hands, I set the takeout bag silently by the door and backed away. In the elevator, I pressed the button for the lobby and leaned against the wall, trying to breathe through the pain crushing my chest. Somehow, I made it to my car without collapsing. Once inside, I let out a sob that had been building since I heard the first words. It tore through my body, leaving me gasping. I cried until I couldn't breathe, clutching the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned liquid beneath my feet. When the initial shock began to subside, a strange calm settled over me. I didn't feel sad anymore, I felt angry. And beneath the anger was something even more powerful: resolve. Jason thought I was stupid and desperate? He was about to learn how wrong he was. I pulled out my phone and sent him a text, running some errands after work. Be home around 6 instead of 5. Love you. The words "love you" nearly made me vomit, but I needed him to believe nothing had changed. I spent the next hour in my car, alternating between crying and planning. I couldn't let him know what I'd heard. Not yet. I needed time to figure out what to do, how to protect myself financially and emotionally. The baby complicated everything. Our baby. My baby. At exactly 6 o'clock, I walked back into our building, my face carefully composed. I'd fixed my makeup, practiced my smile, and buried my broken heart beneath a mask of normalcy. I'd never been much of an actress, but that day I gave the performance of my life. I opened the door to find Jason on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up with a smile that now seemed so obviously fake. "Hey, babe. How was work?" he asked, getting up to kiss me. It took everything in me not to recoil from his touch. His lips on my cheek felt like acid, but I smiled and kissed him back. "Good, just busy." "I brought dinner," I said, holding up a different takeout bag I'd picked up on my way home. "You're the best," he said, taking the bag and peering inside. "Always taking care of me." The double meaning of his words made my stomach turn, but I kept smiling. As he unpacked the food, I noticed small things I'd been blind to before. The way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. How his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. The careful distance he maintained even as he acted affectionate. How had I missed all these signs? How had I been so completely fooled? The man sitting across from me, talking about his fictional day of meetings, was a stranger. A con artist who had targeted me, used me, and was laughing at me behind my back. But now I could see clearly. And Jason had no idea that everything had changed. He thought I was the same trusting, loving Rebecca who'd left that morning. He had no clue that with every fake smile and casual lie, he was digging his grave deeper. I wouldn't be anyone's fool anymore. The next 14 days were the hardest of my life. Every morning, I woke up beside the man who had betrayed me and pretended everything was normal. I made coffee, kissed him goodbye, and went to work as if my world hadn't imploded. But inside, I was a hurricane of emotions, rage, grief, betrayal, and beneath it all, the knowledge that I was carrying his child. In private moments, I let myself feel the full weight of the pain. I cried in my car during lunch breaks, screaming into a pillow I kept in the trunk for that purpose. I took long showers so Jason wouldn't hear my sobs over the running water. Sometimes the grief was so physical it felt like I was being torn apart from the inside. Other times, the anger burned so hot I could barely keep from confronting him on the spot. The day after I overheard the conversation, I called Emily. She's been my best friend since college, the person who always tells me the truth even when it hurts. I needed her now more than ever. "I need to see you," I said, my voice still raw from crying. "Something's happened." We met at a small coffee shop far from my apartment, somewhere Jason would never go. The moment Emily saw my face, she knew something was terribly wrong. "What happened? Are you sick?" she asked, immediately taking my hands. I told her everything, the pregnancy test, the overheard conversation, my decision to pretend I didn't know. By the end, Emily was squeezing my hands so tightly it almost hurt, her face a mirror of the fury I felt. "That manipulative, lying piece of garbage," she said, her voice low and intense. "Rebecca, you need to get out of there. Now." "I know," I said. "But I need to be smart about this. If I just leave, he could try to claim half of everything. I need a plan." Emily nodded, switching immediately from angry friend to strategic ally. She's an attorney at a family law firm, and her professional instincts kicked in. "First, you need to document everything," she said. "Start gathering financial records showing how much you've paid for. Text messages where he's asked for money, bank statements, everything." Over the next few days, that's exactly what I did. I went through our entire financial history, creating a spreadsheet of exactly how much I'd given Jason over the past 2 years. The total made me physically ill, nearly $60,000 when I counted rent, bills, loans for his business ventures, and other expenses. Money I'd never see again, but the documentation might protect me from future claims. A week after discovering Jason's betrayal, I met with a lawyer Emily recommended. Lisa specialized in domestic financial abuse cases and helped me understand my options. Since Jason and I weren't married, things were both simpler and more complicated. I didn't need a divorce, but I also had fewer legal protections. The good news is most of the assets are in your name, Lisa said after reviewing my documents. The bad news is, without a formal agreement, he could try to claim he has a right to stay in the apartment since he's been living there. We developed a plan. I would move all my money from our joint checking account, which contained mostly my deposits anyway, into a new account at a different bank. I would line up a new place to live. And I would give Jason formal, written notice to vacate our apartment, which was leased in my name only. During this time, I also confirmed my pregnancy with a doctor. I was about 6 weeks along, healthy so far. The doctor asked if the father would be joining us for future appointments. I said no, fighting back tears. She seemed to understand without me explaining and gently squeezed my shoulder. The question of whether to tell Jason about the baby tormented me. Part of me felt he had a right to know. But another part, the part that had heard him call me pathetic and desperate, couldn't bear the thought of co-parenting with someone so cruel. I decided to wait. I needed to get safely away from him first, then I could decide what to do about the baby. Meanwhile, I maintained my performance at home. I laughed at Jason's jokes, didn't question his late work meetings, and even transferred money when he asked for just a small loan for a can't-miss investment opportunity. Each time he lied to my face, it became a little easier to plan my exit. But Jason wasn't completely oblivious. He noticed changes in my behavior, how I no longer initiated intimacy, how my smile sometimes didn't reach my eyes, how I spent more time with Emily or at work. He started asking questions. "You seem distant lately. Is everything okay?" he asked one night as we were getting ready for bed. "Just stressed about work," I replied, the lie coming easily now. "Big project deadline coming up. You tell me if something was wrong, right?" he pressed, and for a moment, I almost saw genuine concern in his eyes. Then I remembered him laughing with Samantha, and the moment passed. "Of course," I said, kissing his cheek. "There's nothing wrong." Another time, he found me looking at apartment listings on my laptop. I quickly switched screens, but not before he caught a glimpse. "House hunting?" he asked casually. "Planning to upgrade us to a house?" "Just browsing," I said. Daydreaming about the future. Not entirely a lie. I was daydreaming about a future, one without him in it. By the end of the 2 weeks, everything was in place. I had signed a lease on a new apartment, one Jason didn't know about. I had moved most of my important documents and irreplaceable items to Emily's place, a few items at a time. I had transferred my money to the new account. And I had rehearsed exactly what I would say when the moment came to end the charade. The night before my planned confrontation, I lay awake beside Jason, watching him sleep. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. How could someone who looked like that be capable of such calculated cruelty? For a brief moment, I wondered if I'd misheard, if there was some explanation that would make sense of everything. Then I remembered his laughter, the contempt in his voice, and I knew. There was no misunderstanding. Tomorrow, I would reclaim my life and my dignity. I chose a Sunday morning for the confrontation. Jason was always relaxed on Sundays, his guard down. We developed a routine of lazy mornings with coffee and brunch, often followed by an afternoon movie. This Sunday would be different. I woke up early and made coffee, setting 2 mugs on the kitchen table. I'd already packed a suitcase with essentials and hidden it in my car during a grocery run the previous evening. Emily was on standby, ready to help me move the rest of my things once Jason left. When Jason shuffled into the kitchen around 9, hair tousled from sleep, he smiled at the coffee waiting for him. "Morning, beautiful," he said, kissing the top of my head before sitting down. "Any plans for today?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. The moment had arrived. I sat across from him, my hands wrapped around my coffee mug to hide their trembling. "Jason, we need to talk." His expression shifted slightly, a flicker of wariness crossing his face before he composed it into a look of concern. "That sounds serious. What's up?" I looked directly into his eyes. 2 weeks ago, I came home early. I was outside our apartment door. I heard your conversation with Samantha. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "What are you talking about?" he attempted, but his voice cracked. "I heard everything, Jason. How I'm stupid and desperate. How you're just using me for my money until Samantha takes you back. How pathetic I am for thinking we'll get married." My voice was steady, calmer than I felt. "I heard you both laughing at me." "Becca, no, you misunderstood," he stammered, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. "It wasn't what it sounded like." "Then what was it?" I asked. "Explain to me what I misunderstood about you saying you're just using me for my money." It was just talk. You know how sometimes you say things you don't mean to impress someone." His eyes were wide, pleading. "Samantha reached out, and I was trying to act like I didn't care about you, like I was in control. But it wasn't true. None of it was true." The excuses were exactly what I'd expected. I almost felt disappointed at how predictable they were. "So you lied to her about using me, but you've been honest with me?" I asked. "That's your defense?" "That you're a liar either way." His strategy shifted instantly. "Okay, look, I messed up. I said some stupid things I didn't mean because I was confused. Samantha was pressuring me, and I didn't know how to handle it. But I love you, Rebecca. You know I love you. What I know," I said, my voice hardening, "is that you've taken almost $60,000 from me over the past 2 years. What I know is that you went to Chicago to see your ex while I paid for what I thought was a business trip. What I know is that you have been laughing at me behind my back while planning a future with someone else." Jason's face changed again, panic setting in as he realized his usual tactics weren't working. "Baby, please. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But we can work through this. I'll pay you back every cent, I swear. I'll cut off all contact with Samantha. I'll do anything." "It's too late," I said simply. "I've already found a new place to live. I'm moving out today." His shock was almost comical. "What? You can't just leave. This is our home. This apartment is leased in my name," I reminded him. "I've prepared a formal notice for you to vacate within 30 days, as required by law. It's on the counter." "You can't be serious," he said, standing up abruptly. 2 years together, and you're just walking away? Over one mistake." "It wasn't one mistake, Jason. It was 2 years of lies. 2 years of using me. 2 years of taking advantage of my trust and my heart." I stood as well, maintaining my composure even as he began to fall apart. "I deserve better than that. I deserve better than you." His tactics shifted again, this time to anger. "So that's it? You're just throwing me out? Where am I supposed to go?" "Perhaps Samantha will take you in," I suggested coolly. "Or you could use some of the money you've been saving from what I gave you for business expenses to put a down payment on that condo she liked." The direct quote from his conversation made him flinch. He knew there was no more denying what I'd heard. "Rebecca, please," he tried one more time, his voice softer now. "I know I hurt you. I know I messed up. But everyone deserves a second chance. We can go to counseling, work through this. I'll prove to you that I can change." For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. We had shared good times together. There had been moments of genuine connection, genuine laughter. But then I remembered the contempt in his voice as he mocked me to Samantha, and my resolve hardened. "My decision is made," I said firmly. "I'll be back at 5 to collect the rest of my things. I expect you to be gone by then." I picked up my purse and walked toward the door, my legs surprisingly steady despite the emotional earthquake happening inside me. As I reached for the doorknob, Jason called out one last time. "What about all your stuff? You can't just leave everything." I turned back to him. "Emily will be helping me move." "And Jason?" "The notice on the counter includes the requirement that you pay next month's rent. It's the least you can do after everything." With that, I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. In the elevator, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding and allowed a single tear to fall. Not from sadness, but from relief. The hardest part was over. I had stood my ground, maintained my dignity, and taken back control of my life. I texted Emily. "It's done. He knows." Her reply came immediately. "How are you feeling?" I thought about it as I walked to my car. "Lighter," I typed back. "Like I've put down something heavy I've been carrying for a long time." That evening, Emily helped me move the rest of my belongings to my new apartment. As promised, Jason wasn't there. He'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm sorry. I'll prove to you this isn't who I really am. Please call me when you're ready to talk." I crumpled the note and threw it away. There would be no more chances, no more conversations. That chapter of my life was closed. My new apartment was smaller than the one I'd shared with Jason, but it was all mine. Emily helped me unpack the essentials and ordered pizza. We sat on my new couch, surrounded by boxes, and raised our soda cans in a toast. "To new beginnings," Emily said. To seeing clearly, I added. That night, alone in my new place, I cried one last time for the relationship I thought I had, for the future I had imagined. But beneath the grief was a surprising feeling of peace. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's lies. I placed my hand gently on my still flat stomach. "It's just you and me now, little one," I whispered. "And we're going to be okay." For the first week after our breakup, Jason was surprisingly quiet. No calls, no texts, no emails. I suspected he was still in shock that his comfortable arrangement had ended so abruptly. Or perhaps he was with Samantha, finally getting what he'd wanted all along. Either way, the silence was welcome as I settled into my new apartment and my new reality. I focused on taking care of myself and my pregnancy. Morning sickness had kicked in with a vengeance, making work challenging, but I pushed through. I hadn't told anyone at the office about the baby yet. It was still early, and I wanted to wait until I was past the first trimester. But I had told my parents during a difficult but necessary phone call. "Mom, Dad, I have some news," I'd said, my voice shaking slightly. "I'm pregnant." Their initial excitement quickly turned to concern when I explained that Jason and I had broken up. I didn't share all the details. Some things were too painful, too humiliating to put into words, but I told them enough. They offered to come stay with me, but I assured them I was okay. "I'm stronger than I thought," I told my mother, surprised to find I meant it. 2 weeks after the breakup, the silence from Jason ended. It started with a text message, "I miss you. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. The next day, he called. I let it go to voicemail. His message sounded contrite, but I deleted it without listening to the end. The calls and texts increased in frequency over the next few days, each one more desperate than the last. "Please, Rebecca, just give me 5 minutes. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I can't eat, I can't sleep, I need to see you. Samantha and I are completely done." I told her I love you. That last one made me laugh bitterly. So Samantha hadn't taken him back after all. I wondered if she'd realized he had no money of his own, or if she'd simply been playing with him all along, enjoying the power she still had over him even after their breakup. After a week of ignored messages, Jason's approach changed. He sent an email with the subject line, "I'm getting help." Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Rebecca, I know I've hurt you in ways that might be unforgivable. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now. I'm writing to let you know that I've started seeing a therapist to understand why I behaved the way I did. I've also taken a job waiting tables to start paying back what I owe you. It's not much, but it's a start. I've attached a receipt for the first payment I've put into your account. I don't expect this to change anything between us. I just want you to know I'm trying to be better." The email was surprisingly mature, lacking the manipulative tone of his previous messages. And, true to his word, there was a deposit of $200 into my old account. It was a tiny fraction of what he owed me, but it was something. I didn't respond to the email, but I did feel a small shift in my anger. Not forgiveness, not even close, but perhaps a tiny step toward acceptance that what had happened was now in the past. My moment of reflection was short-lived. The very next day, Emily called me, her voice tight with concern. "Jason showed up at my apartment looking for you," she said. "He seemed really desperate. Said he needs to talk to you about something important." My stomach dropped. "Did you tell him where I live?" "Of course not," Emily assured me. "But Rebecca, he didn't look good. He was unshaven, clothes wrinkled. Said he lost his apartment and has been staying with a friend." "That's not my problem," I said firmly, even as a small part of me felt a twinge of pity. "He made his choices." "I know," Emily agreed. "Just be careful." He seemed really unstable. That night, as if summoned by our conversation, it happened. I was getting ready for bed around 11 when I heard it, my name being called from outside. I went to the window and peered through the blinds. There, on the sidewalk in front of my building, stood Jason. It was raining, a steady downpour that had soaked him completely. He was shouting my name over and over. Rebecca, please. I need to talk to you. Rebecca. I stepped back from the window, my heart racing. How had he found my new address? Had he followed me from work? The thought sent a chill through me. I know you're in there, he shouted, his voice cracking. Please, just 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I watched as neighbors' lights began turning on. A man from the building across the street opened his window and yelled for Jason to shut up. But Jason kept calling, his voice growing more desperate. I love you, Rebecca. I've always loved you. Samantha meant nothing. She used me and threw me away. You're the only one who ever really cared about me. The irony of his words wasn't lost on me. Now he knew how it felt to be used and discarded. Now he understood the pain of being nothing but a convenience to someone you loved. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the police, when I saw the building security guard approach Jason. There was a brief confrontation that I couldn't hear clearly. Then the guard took Jason by the arm and led him away from the building. Jason went without much resistance, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands shaking. Part of me had wanted to go down there, to confront him, to demand he leave me alone for good. But a wiser part knew that any engagement would only encourage him. The best response was no response at all. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. They made me leave, but I'm not giving up on us. I've changed. I'll prove it to you. I blocked the number immediately and called Emily. Jason found my apartment, I told her when she answered. He was outside screaming in the rain until security removed him. Oh my God, she gasped. Are you okay? Do you want me to come over? I'm okay, I said, surprised to find it was true. He's gone now. But I think I need to consider a restraining order. I'll help you file first thing tomorrow, Emily promised. In the meantime, make sure your doors and windows are locked and call the police if he comes back. After we hung up, I double-checked all the locks and drew the blinds tight. Then I sat in the darkness of my living room, one hand resting protectively over my stomach. We're safe, I whispered to my baby. And we're not going to let anyone hurt us again. The rain continued to fall outside, washing away the last traces of Jason's dramatic scene. Like the rain, I felt myself washing away the last traces of the love I had once felt for him. In its place was something stronger, a fierce determination to protect myself and my child from anyone who would try to use or harm us. Jason's desperate performance in the rain wasn't about love. It was about losing control, losing his meal ticket, losing the power he thought he had over me. And I wasn't going to give any of it back to him. Not now. Not ever. 3 months passed, and with them came significant changes. My small baby bump was now visible, and I'd shared the news with my colleagues at work. To my relief, my boss had been supportive, assuring me that my position was secure and working with me to develop a plan for my maternity leave. The morning sickness had finally subsided, replaced by a surge of energy that I channeled into creating a life I was proud of. I had painted and furnished my new apartment, turning it into a true home. One bedroom was gradually transforming into a nursery, with a crib and changing table I had assembled myself. My parents had visited for a weekend, helping with the nursery and bringing baby clothes they'd excitedly purchased. My mom had held me one night as I finally told her the full story of Jason's betrayal, letting out the pain I'd been carrying alone for so long. Her quiet strength and unconditional love had been a balm to my still healing heart. Emily remained my rock, accompanying me to doctor's appointments and helping host a small gender reveal party where I learned I was having a girl. She also helped me file and obtain a temporary restraining order against Jason after his scene outside my apartment. He had violated it once with another desperate email, but had been quiet since receiving formal notice from the court. Through a support group for single mothers that I'd joined at Emily's suggestion, I had made new friends who understood my situation. Maggie was already a single mom to a 2-year-old boy, while Diane was due just a month before me. We met weekly for walks in the park, sharing our fears and hopes for the future. At work, my renewed focus had caught the attention of senior management. Without Jason's drama and financial needs draining my energy, I had thrown myself into my projects with newfound creativity and determination. My boss had hinted at a promotion possibility after my maternity leave, acknowledging my consistent performance despite my personal challenges. I was healing, growing, and discovering parts of myself that had been overshadowed during my relationship with Jason. I found joy in small things, feeling my daughter kick for the first time, waking up in a space that was entirely my own, making decisions without having to consider a partner who didn't have my best interests at heart. One Saturday morning, I was at the grocery store, carefully selecting organic produce as I'd become particular about nutrition during my pregnancy. I was examining avocados when I felt someone watching me. I looked up to see Jason standing at the end of the aisle, his cart half filled with frozen dinners and beer. My heart raced, but I took a deep breath, reminding myself of the progress I'd made. I was not the same woman who had left him 3 months ago. I was stronger now. Jason looked terrible. He had lost weight, his clothes hung loosely on his frame, and his usually well-groomed hair was long and unkempt. When our eyes met, he hesitated before pushing his cart toward me. "Rebecca," he said, his voice hoarse. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Jason," I replied coolly. "You're violating the restraining order." He held up his hands defensively. "This is a public place. I'm grocery shopping. I didn't follow you here." I believed him. The shock on his face when he saw me had seemed genuine. Still, I kept my guard up. "How are you?" he asked, his eyes dropping to my visible baby bump. They widened in surprise. "You're pregnant." I instinctively placed a protective hand over my stomach. "Yes." "Is it?" He began, but couldn't finish the question. "Yes," I said again, my voice firm. "She's yours biologically, but I'm raising her on my own." Jason's face went through a series of emotions: shock, confusion, hurt, anger, and finally, a kind of resigned sadness. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly. "I found out the day I overheard your conversation with Samantha," I explained, surprised at how steady my voice remained. "I was coming home to tell you. I had your favorite takeout and a pair of baby shoes." The realization of what he had lost seemed to hit Jason all at once. He physically staggered, gripping his cart for support. "Rebecca, I don't know what to say. I have rights." "We can discuss this through lawyers," I cut him off. "I'm not preventing you from being in her life if you can prove you're stable and responsible. But given your history, you'll understand why I have concerns." He nodded slowly, looking defeated. "I've been trying to get my life together. I got a steady job. Samantha's completely out of the picture. She left me for some rich guy in New York. Turns out she was just using me too." I felt no satisfaction at his pain, just a quiet acknowledgement of the irony. "I hope things improve for you, Jason. But I need to finish my shopping now. Can I call you?" he asked desperately. "To talk about the baby?" "Contact my lawyer," I said, handing him a business card I kept in my purse for this very possibility. "She'll arrange appropriate communication." With that, I pushed my cart past him, my heart pounding, but my head held high. I finished my shopping quickly and headed to the checkout, half expecting Jason to follow me. But he didn't. When I glanced back, he was still standing where I'd left him, staring at the business card in his hand. As I loaded my groceries into my car, I allowed myself a moment to acknowledge the complex emotions of the encounter. There was no joy in seeing Jason suffering, no vindictive pleasure in his downfall. Just a calm certainty that I had made the right decision for myself and my daughter. When I arrived home, I was surprised to find my neighbor Michael helping an elderly woman with her groceries. Michael lived across the hall and had been unfailingly kind since I moved in, offering to help with small repairs and checking in occasionally without being intrusive. "Need a hand?" he called, seeing me struggling with my bags. "That would be great, thanks," I replied gratefully. As we carried the groceries up to my apartment, Michael chatted about the community garden he was helping to start behind our building. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself smiling despite the emotional morning I'd had. "You should join us," he suggested as he set the last bag on my kitchen counter. "Gardening is supposed to be very therapeutic. Plus, you'll have fresh vegetables right outside your door." "I'd like that," I said, realizing I meant it. "Though I should warn you, I've never had much luck with plants." Michael laughed. "That's why it's a community garden. We all help each other." He glanced at his watch. "I should get going. Let me know if you need anything else." After he left, I unpacked my groceries with a strange feeling of lightness. The encounter with Jason, while difficult, had reinforced how far I'd come. And Michael's simple kindness had reminded me that not all men were like Jason. There were good people in the world who helped others without expecting anything in return. That night, as I felt my daughter kicking inside me, I realized something important. I didn't need a romantic relationship to feel complete or fulfilled. I had meaningful friendships, a supportive family, a career I loved, and soon, a daughter to cherish. My life was full of love and purpose. The painful chapter with Jason had taught me valuable lessons about trust, self-worth, and resilience. But it didn't define me. It was just one part of a much larger story, my story, that was still being written, one day at a time. 1 year later, I sat on a park bench watching the autumn leaves drift lazily to the ground. In my arms, 6-month-old Lily gurgled happily, reaching for a bright red leaf that had landed on her blanket. Her dark eyes, so much like mine, sparkled with curiosity and joy. Every time I looked at her, my heart expanded with a love I hadn't known was possible. "That's a maple leaf, sweetie," I told her, holding it where she could examine it with her tiny fingers. "Isn't it beautiful?" The journey to this peaceful moment had been filled with challenges and triumphs I never could have anticipated when I stood outside that apartment door 1.5 years ago, my world crumbling around me. After our grocery store encounter, Jason had indeed contacted my lawyer. What followed were months of negotiations about his parental rights and responsibilities. To his credit, he had maintained steady employment, completed a parenting course, and started therapy. When Lily was born, he was allowed supervised visitation twice a month. Our interactions were strictly businesslike, limited to Lily's needs and schedule. The pain of his betrayal had faded to a dull memory, replaced by a pragmatic approach to co-parenting. I wouldn't call it forgiveness. Rather, it was a conscious decision not to let anger consume valuable energy I needed for my daughter and myself. Jason had changed in ways I hadn't expected. Becoming a father seemed to awaken something in him, a sense of responsibility he'd previously lacked. He never missed a child support payment or visitation, and he treated me with a respect born from guilt and regret. During one visitation exchange, he had quietly said, "You're an amazing mother, Rebecca. I'm sorry for everything I put you through." I had simply nodded, neither accepting nor rejecting his apology. My forgiveness wasn't something he was entitled to, it was something I gave myself, a release from the burden of resentment that had nothing to do with whether he deserved it. My own journey had been transformative. The promotion I'd been hinted about came through 3 months after my return from maternity leave. The additional income allowed me to move to a slightly larger apartment with a small garden patio where Lily and I spent summer evenings. The single mothers group had become an essential part of my support system. We celebrated each other's victories, large and small, and provided shoulders to cry on during difficult days. Through them, I learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the courage to be authentic in a world that often demands perfection. I had also started a blog sharing my experience of rebuilding after betrayal and embracing single motherhood. To my surprise, it had resonated with thousands of women in similar situations. The comments section became a community of shared wisdom and encouragement, reminding me that my story, though unique in its details, was part of a larger human experience of resilience and growth. Michael, my neighbor, had remained a steady presence in our lives. What began as friendly neighborly assistance had evolved into a deep friendship. He respected my boundaries and understood my hesitance to rush into another relationship. Instead, we enjoyed simple pleasures, community garden work, occasional dinners where he would cook while I entertained Lily, movie nights after she was asleep. I didn't know if our friendship might someday become something more, but I was in no hurry to define it. I had learned the value of letting relationships develop naturally, without expectations or pressure. Do you mind if I join you? Speaking of Michael, he appeared beside our bench, holding 2 coffee cups. I smiled and moved over to make room. We'd love the company, I replied, accepting the cup he offered. Lily was just getting acquainted with fall foliage. Michael sat down, making a silly face at Lily that sent her into peals of laughter. The sound warmed my heart more than the coffee warmed my hands. "How was your meeting this morning?" he asked, referring to the support group I had recently started leading for women recovering from financial and emotional abuse in relationships. "Powerful," I said. "There's something healing about helping others navigate a path you've already walked. Every time I share my story, it reinforces how far I've come." Michael nodded. "You should be proud. Not everyone could have handled what you went through with such grace." I laughed softly. Trust me, it wasn't always graceful. There were plenty of nights I cried myself to sleep or raged at the unfairness of it all. But somewhere along the way, I realized that while I couldn't control what happened to me, I could control how I responded to it. I looked down at Lily, who was now contentedly chewing on her teething toy. And she gave me a reason to make sure that response was one of strength rather than bitterness. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the path before us. It struck me as a perfect metaphor for life, the interplay of difficult moments and beautiful ones, each necessary to appreciate the other. "You know," I said thoughtfully, "if I could go back to that day outside the apartment door, I wouldn't change anything. As painful as it was, it set me on a path to becoming who I am now. And I like who I am now." Michael smiled. "I like who you are now too." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Lily and the falling leaves, 2 natural wonders equally deserving of attention. Later that evening, after putting Lily to bed, I opened my laptop to update my blog. I had received a message from a woman who had just discovered her husband's affair and financial deception. Her pain was raw, her future uncertain, her self-worth shattered. She asked the question I had asked myself in those early dark days: how do I ever trust again? How do I move forward from this? I thought carefully before responding, wanting to honor both her pain and her potential for healing. Trust isn't something you give blindly after betrayal. It's something you rebuild carefully, starting with yourself. Trust that you are strong enough to survive this. Trust that you are worthy of honest love. Trust that this pain, though it feels endless now, will eventually subside. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting or minimizing what happened. It means carrying the lessons with you while refusing to carry the weight of someone else's choices. It means building boundaries that protect your heart without walling it off completely. The road ahead isn't easy, but you don't have to travel it alone. Reach out to friends, family, support groups, or professionals who can walk alongside you. Be patient with yourself on the days when grief overwhelms you, and celebrate the moments when you catch glimpses of your future self, stronger, wiser, and ultimately happier than before. You are more resilient than you know. Trust that. As I posted the response, I realized I was no longer just writing to this woman. I was writing to my past self, to the Rebecca who stood frozen outside that door 18 months ago, her world collapsing. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her that the ending of that story would actually be a beginning. That the shattered pieces would reform into something beautiful and strong. That she would not just survive but thrive. Have you ever had a moment when betrayal led to an unexpected blessing? Or a time when what seemed like the worst day of your life actually set you on a better path? Share your story in the comments below. Every experience of resilience inspires someone else to keep going. And if you found strength in my journey, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that pain doesn't have the final word. Thank you for being part of this healing community, and remember, the most beautiful chapters of your life may still be unwritten.